are listening to a One Pint Stand, a Minnesota craft beer podcast that tells the stories of craft beer in Minnesota and beyond. So kick back, relax, and grab a cold one. The show starts now. Hello, my name is Dan Bobian, and I write, produce, and host a One Pint Stand. I'm ecstatic that you're listening. This episode of a One Pint Stand is proudly sponsored by Heavy Rotation Brewing in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. This small batch brewery kicks out a big variety of expertly crafted beers. Their menu has something for everyone, and their staff will make you feel welcome every time you visit. So check out Heavy Rotation Brewing. On this episode, I stop into Black Frost Distilling in New Ulm, Minnesota, to talk with co-founder Jace Marti. If Jace's name rings a bell, that's because he was a fixture in the Minnesota craft beer scene for a long time with Shells. However, he and his co-founder Nate started Black Frost Distilling a few years ago, and they are crafting some award-winning spirits made with all Minnesota-grown ingredients. This interview is going to be so much information delivered in such an accessible way. I really think you're going to like it. So let's head down to the event space at Black Frost Distilling for my interview with Jace Marti. Cheers. Welcome to another on-location episode of a One Pint Stand. I'm your host, Dan Bobian. Today, I'm down in New Ulm, Minnesota at Black Frost Distillery. I'm being joined by Black Frost Distillery co-founder Jace Marti. Jace, thank you so much for having me down here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for making the trip down.
Yeah,
Happy to have you.
It's a pressure cooker of a day, baby.
This is the summer swelter.
The summer swelter, and we're sitting here in your kind of like event space in the back of the building. Very swanky. I think I can safely say this is the swankiest podcast setting I've ever been to.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I've been to some nice breweries, but this, I feel like I should have worn like a t-shirt tuxedo to be a little bit more formal and used a monocle or something. So,
all right.
But we're down here. I saw that for many years I've been wanting to come down to New Ulm, and it just seemed like the stars aligned. I saw that you won a pretty big deal award for one of your spirits, and I'm like, you know what? This is it. This is the summer. So we contacted each other. We started chatting, and so I'm down here today. Tomorrow I'm going over to Shells, doing a tour there with Kyle. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming, based on the last name, you two are related.
Yeah, it's my brother.
What your brother? Older or younger?
Younger.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Year apart.
During the Patreon segment, you'll have to give me some dirt on him.
Will do.
Yeah, I can surprise him with some funny stories.
Sure.
So are you still afraid of the dark, Kyle? But I'm really excited about coming down here to learn about your distillery and your process. I think there's many unique things that we'll get into. But before we do that, let's just do a couple get to know you questions. So I always like to kind of give people a chance to introduce themselves. So if you would indulge the listeners and tell them your favorite distilled spirit, your favorite way to enjoy said spirit, and your favorite place in New Ulm to have a cocktail.
Oh, okay. I guess going in reverse order. I've got some little kids, so I don't get to go out a whole lot anymore.
Sure.
Favorite place is probably after the kids are in bed and on the back deck with my wife. Catching the sunset, whatever. Watch. But usually lately, well, it's a cooker now, so I've switched over to rum, and it's been a lot of mojitos. Oh, okay. But I think on my regular go-to is like a pour bourbon on a Big Rock.
Okay.
Yep, Big
Nice.
Rock ice.
Yeah, I like just one ice cube. Yes. I feel like I used to like we all do. We start out with something, we just see stuff on TV. I'm like, oh, just fill the glass with ice and then pour it. It just gets real watered down. And now as I'm kind of getting more into it, I want to enjoy the flavor. Yeah,
and then just, growing up in beer, drinking beer my whole life,
right.
I like it a little colder. It just, yeah.
That's interesting. So, is Black Frost the first distillery in New Ulm?
No.
Or have there been others?
Yep, there was, for a very brief period of time, and I think 1859, there was one, 1860. I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, Waraju Warju, it's the Dakota word for cottonwood.
Okay.
Warju Distillery. They were up for maybe a year, and then they got burned down during the Dakota conflict when most of New Ulm was burned to the ground. So, and then I think they operated as like a mill for a few years after the fact, but they never resumed distilling, and that was the end of it. So, in between then and now, we're the only distillery.
Wow, that's interesting. It seems to me that, with breweries, I'm reading, I'm going to give Doug Hoverson a shout out, his Land of Amber Waters book on beer history. Seems like there were a lot of breweries that had come and gone. I don't know very much about the distillery portion of the state's history with beverages. Do you know offhand currently how many distilleries are operating in the state of Minnesota?
In Minnesota, you're between like 30 and 40.
Okay.
So not a whole lot, nowhere near where we're at breweries. And, if you think of kind of like the rise of craft beverage alcohol, the first wave was wine in the 70s. Then you had beer in the 80s. 60s with the wine, beer in the early 80s. I look at craft spirits right now as like 1995 in beer.
Okay.
I think that's kind of where we're at, where you're still kind of on that first wave, but there's a bit of a plateau, kind of a shakeout.
Shells, James Page maybe, some of those.
Yep, some of the early crafts. But if you think like a bigger scene, like that's when Stone started, that's when Dogfish Head started,
okay.
like kind of the ones that would go on to become very large breweries.
Yeah.
I kind of see that's where craft spirits are at, is 30 years behind where beer is at.
Okay, that's interesting. That makes me real excited for what it could become.
Yeah, and that's the hope.
Yeah. So I think when a lot of people, you mentioned beer earlier. Can you give us just a rundown of your career in craft beverages? Because I think we first met when you were doing the beer thing. Yeah. But I'm just curious to know, how does one start in beer and then wind up coming the other way?
Yeah. I did the beer thing my whole life. It was part of the family business. Grew up at Shell's. Spent my entire life there. Worked full time there 20 years. Yeah. I mean, I started. Some of my earliest memories were my dad making us do the jobs that he would, pay someone else to do. I know, washed a lot of kegs, thousands of kegs, cleaned a lot of dirty corners, and got to do the character building jobs, as you would call them.
I mean, those are important.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You need those
for sure. But started in high school working in the bottle house and washing kegs, and that was when we still did returnables. So
that's right.
The new guy got to do the uncasing of the boxes and sending them down the line, which on a day like today, don't miss that day.
I'm guessing it wasn't air conditioned.
No. I kind of did that through high school, college. I studied graphic design. I wanted to do advertising for the brewery. So when I came back, I did a lot of like packaging design, advertising, working with the sales staff there, and then was like huge into home brewing. Eventually kind of transitioned into brewing, worked in the cellars a bit, and then went to brewing school, studied at the VLB in Berlin, and interned at a brewery in Germany, one in Austria, came back and did a lot of stuff. Worked trying to, Shell's has been around for 165 years, and so I think there was plenty of opportunities to improve on certain things, and tried to shift the sales, so to speak, a little bit, and kind of maybe a little bit in the direction we were going, and be a little more crafty, just sticking to Deer Brand and premium. But worked a lot in like quality control, getting our packaging quality up to speed a little bit better. Started our sour beer program. That was a big thing.
Oh my gosh, I miss that so much.
Yeah, same. The Star Keller Noble Star. And then at the end, put in a pilot brewery at Shell's. And so, spent a lot of time in beer.
Where did your fascination with distilling come from?
I remember the first time I ever bought a bottle of whiskey, or just like even got into whiskey. It was after in Madison, the Great Taste of the Midwest.
Oh, sure.
I
Okay.
don't know if have you been there?
No, it's on my bucket list.
It is.
A lot of it's the way I structure. I need to relook at how I structure my summers, because that's always like after all pints, I usually go somewhere and they're like, "Hey, are you coming to the Great Taste of Midwest?" I'm like, I kind of need a cleanse right now.
That's a bruiser of a festival.
If they had it at the beginning of summer, I would be there all the time, because I have a friend who's a blogger down in Madison. He's like, "Hey, if you want to go, I will get you a ticket."
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason for you not to come.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So
Someday.
Yes.
It's definitely
Yes.
worth the trip. But so the way that festival works is, the main event is on Saturday, but Friday, Madison is set up this way where every brewery can take over a bar in that downtown area.
So fun.
And you do a massive tap takeover, some
Okay.
sort of event kind of a thing. And like the pre-party is almost as big as the event itself.
That's what everybody says.
And-
They say you have to go for the whole weekend. You
Yeah.
can't just come for the
Yep.
festival on Saturday.
Yeah, and so we had just finished our tap takeover event, and we're tearing down like, all right, where are we going next? Because there's all these events. And Dan Stavig, who's now the head brewer at Indeed, he goes, we're heading out of town a little bit. We're going to go to this place where they're doing flights of Russian Imperial stouts paired with the whiskey that it was barrel aged in.
Oh my God.
It was like a $120 flight, but
That's
it was
insane.
incredible because you got 4 Russian Imperial stouts and then 4, neat pours of
Yeah.
the spirit that those beers were aged in.
Holy crap.
And, up until then, it's just beer.
Sure.
And that was the first time where like you could distinctly pick out the character of the spirit and then see how it was affecting into the beer. And that was kind of like one of those light bulb moments where I'm like, oh, I think I need to learn a little bit more about this. And so that was kind of my first foray introduction into it. But
That's really interesting. Well, and then from the beer standpoint, in talking to Mike Hoops at Town Hall, who I feel is like the barrel aging master Yoda of craft beer. He knows so much. He's going to forget more than most people could ever know in their lifetime about how barrel works and just understanding it and the time and the kind of, I call it magic, but there's probably scientific terms for what goes on.
magic's a good word.
It's really interesting. It's like you have to be so patient. And so like, I think about like the Star Keller and the Noble Star series of beers that were all wood aged. I'm imagining that you created and learned a lot about how liquid interacts with wood.
100%. Yeah. Above all else, like the Star Keller and the sour beers really influenced what we're doing here, and played a huge role in shaping how we create the spirits that we're making.
Yeah.
Both on just like the initial fermentation side and then that long term of like understanding how the changes happen in barrels, even though it's a very different, liquid that you're maturing, just getting that experience of how those liquids change over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you get the idea to like start Black Frost?
Yeah. It was a bit of a slow burn at first.
Sure.
So it started in beer. I always never know where to start this conversation because it can keep going back and back and back. But earliest conversations was...
I'm imagining like a Fisher Price barrel set, like in your basement. Kyle playing it. Okay.
No, it's again all very beer focused. This couple different like events that happened that led up to when first was like being at RAR and talking about RAR is the largest single site malt house in the world. I think at one point, maybe now it's just North America, but and no barley to be found anywhere nearby. And the reason it is here is because barley used to be here, and it's becoming more and more of a problem as they have to ship it from further away in, and we're talking about that, and if this barley was grown here, why can't we grow it again? And at the same time, like hops were, everyone was trying to grow their own hops. Dating myself a bit here, but and that just doesn't work down here. It's pretty windy, so you had a lot of damage, just wind damage from that. But barley is something we could grow, and we got the right soil type for it. It was grown here. It was it's not a stretch to grow it here, and so that was kind of an idea that it had planted. And then I was doing a tasting at Old Chicago, I think it was, and sampling out Hefeweizen summertime, like a day like today. It was just a hot day, and out on their patio, and there was two people that had been there a while, went up with the samples, and they
were trying to get every notch on their world traveler.
No, they were out celebrating.
Okay.
And had been celebrating for a while, and come to find out that it was one of the small grains agronomists for the University of Minnesota and a grad student that had just completed her dissertation, I believe.
Oh, sure, okay.
And he had some smart comments. He's Dutch, and had some smart comments about American beer. He was drinking Duvel at the time.
Oh, okay.
A couple Duvels on a hot day.
That'll get you there.
Yeah, loosen you up. And that turned into literally a 4-hour conversation about growing barley in and around New Ulm. And so kind of set this ambitious goal that we would grow 15% of all the barley that we used at Shell's within 15 miles of the brewery.
Wow.
And that first year, I had convinced my friend, who's now my business partner, to plant some barley acreage for us.
Yeah.
And that was 11 or 12 years ago.
Okay.
And we were a couple weeks from harvest and met out in the fields with some beers, walked out little to the middle of the field, and watched the sunset and just kind of taken in the moment, because it was, standing in the middle of a barley field is a cool experience if you've never gotten a chance. And just dreaming a little bit, what else can we do with this? And then because he wanted to grow more of it. And I just said, you can make whiskey out of barley. It's just like making beer. And maybe we could talk to some local distilleries. What if we made it? And that was kind of that initial conversation. So that was kind of the first domino to fall, which eventually led to Black Frost.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about, I think there's probably some listeners of the show that know how distilling works. Mm-hmm. Can you give us just like the basics? How, and from the process of you have grains just like you would beer.
Yeah.
You kind of add water, let it get to a certain temperature, does its thing. Can you just talk me through the process of how you start with like the basic ingredients, and then how, as we're sitting here looking at these very, very beautiful bottles of rye malt whiskey, how it gets to that point?
Yeah. So we're primarily whiskey focused. So
Yep.
I'll kind of explain it in that context.
Sure. Yep.
So we're going to use we use primarily malted grains, just like in brewing, again, coming from a brewing background. But in bourbon, especially, bourbon has to, by law, be made with 51% corn. So we're going to mash, ferment, and create a distiller's beer, just like in brewing. The biggest difference is that in brewing, you're separating the grains through a lauter tun. Here, we're just going to ferment on the grain itself. So when we go to mill our grains, we're not trying to preserve the husk during milling. We're just grinding it down to as fine of a grist as possible.
Yeah.
We use a six roller mill, just like in brewing.
Okay.
And then we have essentially is a 1-vessel brew house, which is right behind us there. It's a Sprinkman 2,500 gallon, where we heat up and cool down inside it. So it's essentially just a big mash mixer, but instead of having heating jackets, it has cooling jackets, and then we have an external heating element. So we recircuit through there to heat it, and then we cool it down inside. So that, we're essentially just mashing in a brewery, and then we bring it up to conversion temperature, but we don't sterilize it. So once we hit there, instead of bringing it up to a boil, now we're just going to cool it back down, and we're going to send that whole entire mash into a fermenter.
Okay.
We're adding our yeast at that same point, and then we do a 7-day fermentation, so like an ale fermentation. And then all of that beer, distiller's beer, then goes into the still itself. So we'll transfer that into called a beer well. So it's just another, for us, a wooden tank with a mixer in it. So we resuspend all those solids back in there, so it's a nice even mix. And that's what gets fed into our still. So we're going to create 7-8% alcohol distiller's beer again. And, not something you're going to drink, one, because it's full of grain bits, but That will send through our still. We have a column still. It's a combination column and pot still. So the column is 30 feet tall. It has 14 inches in diameter. And that is what we use to strip out the alcohol. So from 8%, we're going to bring that up to 52% alcohol or so. And that's the initial stripping run. And that is continuously, we're pumping live steam into the bottom of the still. The beer is getting fed into the top. So as the beer goes down, steam rises, and the alcohol boils at a lower temperature than water. So we can strip off alcohol without just getting all water vapor.
Okay.
And then we control the proof by how much steam and the flow that we're adding. So it's the temperature that's coming off the still.
Okay.
That determines your alcohol percentage.
So if you go higher on the steam temperature,
you're going to have
get
less alcohol, more water.
Alcohol. Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
So yeah, the cooler, the more alcohol you're going to get because there's no water vapor passing through.
And when you're talking proof, that's a word that you'll see on every bottle. This says 92 proof. What does that mean for percentage of alcohol?
It's double the percentage.
Okay.
So 46% alcohol is 92 proof.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, so we'll strip it off the column, and this is it's called a continuous column at this point, so we're feeding it in at like 5 gallons per minute, and the alcohol is being distilled after the same, all one continuous motion. That vapor is cooled through a condenser and runs into a doubler, which is just a small pot still, and that is consider a continuous pot still. So as we're distilling the vapor off there, we're replacing it with the alcohol coming off the column.
Okay.
So you start it by having some liquid in there, and then you bring that to, again, whatever temperature you're trying to determine the alcohol proof you're coming off. So we target 125 proof off of our doubler, so 62.5% alcohol.
Okay.
And so for us to do a 2,000-gallon batch is 8 to 9 hours of a distillation run. Huh. And of that, we'll get 5 barrels of whiskey out of it. Okay. 53-gallon barrels at 110 proof.
Now, another thing, especially when we're talking about bourbon whiskey, there's a little special caveat. You can't just throw it into any wooden barrel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has to be aged in a new charred oak container.
Okay.
Doesn't specify a barrel or what a barrel is, but just a charred oak container that is from new oak.
Okay.
It doesn't even have to be American oak, so it can be French oak, Hungarian oak.
Yeah, I think a lot of times I've heard French oak is preferred. Although when a couple years ago I went to Fooder Crafters, and they said something that upwards of 70% of all white oak in the United States comes from the state of Missouri.
Yeah, I believe that.
That's
Missouri is just all oak trees.
Crazy.
Yeah, so the oak contribution is a huge part of bourbon and just any kind of barrel aged spirit. And bourbon, what gives it such its big punch is the fact that it is aged in new oak, and so you get so much more extractive out of it, so much more sweetness, so much barrel character versus like Scotch or single malt where it has to be aged in a used container. Every time you reuse a barrel, you only have 1/3 of the total extractives remaining. So significantly less every time you reuse that barrel.
Now, when you say extractive things, qualities, what is being extracted by the liquid?
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of... So when the spirit comes off the still, it is crystal clear. It looks just like water. So we're staring
That was
at,
the other thing.
Yeah.
up until last summer, I was like, wait, we were at Angel's Envy. So first of all, it's kind of an interesting tour. They give you can taste some of the mash. They're like, you can try this if you want. And to me, it felt like heated up Chardonnay in malto meal. I'm like, this is a different taste, but I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I was like, oh, the liquid is clear. Why is that? It was like, well, that's what it is. It's alcohol.
Alcohol and water.
I'm like, wait a minute. At that point, it was like, my mind was blown because it's like, it looks like this in the bottle. Like, wait a minute. So
all of that color is coming from the barrels.
That is wild. Yep. That's what I'll use the term again. Magic. It's magical what you distillers do.
So some days it feels like that for sure.
Yeah. So it's extracting sugars.
Yeah, all the sweetness, all the color, those caramel flavors, your lactones, some tannins, that's all coming from the barrel itself. So inside the barrel, like when you put the spirit in there, you want that liquid to move as much as possible. You want expansion and contraction. You want that liquid moving as much as possible, because the only way you can get those extractions is that liquid is being forced into the wood and then coming back out.
Okay.
And so in between where all those the positive things are, you have a layer of char. That's that charred oak container.
Okay.
And that acts as a filter. So it's kind of cleaning up the spirit, but then you're getting extractives and you're also getting evaporation as well. So that angel layer component. So you want a lot of things happening in the barrel. You don't want it just sitting there not doing anything.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's so counterintuitive from beer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I think about beer and talk to brewers, they're like, no, everything needs to be sealed. It needs to be tight. We don't want any air getting in. Did that take a little getting used to? Did you feel like the process was a bit sacrilegious?
So my grandpa, this is my analogy I use all the time, is like my grandpa during World War II trained guard dogs, German shepherds, to protect, had to teach these dogs to be vicious. And he was training this dog up until then the war ended and he got to bring this dog home. And so he had just spent, a year training this dog to, protect, soldiers and everything. And he brings it home to, civilian life where absolutely not. And so he had to untrain the dog, everything he just trained it. And I just feel like that has been my life in brewing up until I got here. And then it just forget everything you learned about sanitation.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, while the very basic process is the same, your goals are very different. And so with that is a very different way of, what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. And especially with sanitation is very different in a brewery versus a distillery.
Well, and I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago. You said, a 8-9 hour batch, you'll get, I think you said 2,000 gallons.
Oh, our fermentation size is it's like a 65 barrel brew.
Okay.
So 2,000 gallons of distiller's beer.
Yeah.
And of that, we will get the equivalent of 5 53-gallon barrels of whiskey.
Yeah.
At 110 proof.
So then it goes in the barrel and it will age for how long?
We'll see. We do a minimum of 2 years. There's a legal classification that is called straight whiskey at that point, and then that was what we wanted to have at least as a minimum quality marker. But we're holding the bulk of what we're making back for longer aging.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is a phrase I see a lot, and they talked a lot about this last summer when I went to Kentucky, is bottled in bond.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that is a thing everywhere, or was that just a Kentucky thing?
Kentucky's great at marketing and protecting their, rightfully, spot on the pedestal for the world's largest bourbon production. But no, it's not exclusive to Kentucky.
Okay.
So bottled in bond is aged at least 4 years, bottled at 100 proof, so 50% alcohol.
Okay.
From a single distillery in a single distilling season. So typically what you have is like a fall season and a spring season, and they would shut down in the wintertime.
Okay.
Or it's just too hot, and then maintenance and those kinds of things. So it has to come from either one of those two distilling seasons, single distillery, aged at least 4 years.
Okay. What was the motivation for that law? Were there like a lot of distilleries like, hey, let's just blend something together? I think of, again, we're back to beer collab, hey, let's brew this thing and we'll just like sell it at this thing.
Yeah, no, it's actually kind of the opposite. It was more of like a quality control thing. It'd be more like more equivalent to like the Reinheitsgebot and like setting a quality standard, because you had a lot of rectifiers that would just take, alcohol and throw in chew spit and, whatever kind of flavors, to try and make, the color.
That's how I thought bourbon was brown. I thought it was juice spit. I'm like, hey, I'm going to make some bourbon. I got to run down to the store, get some chewing tobacco.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was I think it's Colonel E.H. Taylor, which is a brand.
Yes.
He lobbied to create this product that had a quality standard of bottled in bond, which was, met these standards, and that created a standard of quality.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
For whiskey in the United States.
Okay. And so if you put bottled in bond on there, it has to age
4 years.
4 years. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
4 years, 100 proof, single distilling season.
Okay.
So there are products that are aged 4 years or longer that are not considered bottled and bond, and that's because probably that you're blending across multiple years of distillation.
Okay. Okay. And when I think about blending across multiple things, I'm back to Mike Hoops, who when they do the best beer event ever, barrel aged week, and they make these creations that I marvel at. And he is so trying to get information out of Mike Hoops. It's like, okay, Dan, go try to slam dunk this basketball. It's impossible.
Yeah.
He is so good at just giving you a little bit of information to keep wanting to be interested, but he's not going to give you any trade secrets.
Yeah.
And so like that blending idea, you know, how many of your products are blended and how many of them are just straight up one type of spirit from one season?
Yeah, so all of our stuff is blended, and
Okay.
we're gonna go way into the weeds here, and I'll explain why. Going from like just the basic classification of bottle and bond to when we again, I never know where to begin these stories. So,
Well, you know what? One thing I didn't ask: what year did Black Frost open?
2022.
2020. Okay.
Yeah, so we're only a couple years into it. So when we were coming up with the idea, to kind of finalize the idea, we went and did the Tennessee, Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and you know, you were down there. Every distillery talks about this is the perfect mash bill that we have. We've been making it for hundreds of years. It makes the best whiskey possible, and you know, even like brewing when you're starting up in a new system, like you can lie to yourself all day long. You have no idea what it's going to taste like till it comes off the still, and then you adapt to whatever house style you've gotten there. So, but with beer versus spirits, you know, beer you have a 2-week feedback loop. Here you're talking a minimum, 2 years, 10, many more years, because that spirit's going to continue to evolve. So to throw a dart at the wall and hope, pick a mash bill and hope that that's going to be the one you want. Either you're just going to ride it out and this is what it's going to be, and this is the flavor profile that's going to be our flavor profile. You can definitely do that. Or we looked at it, took a different approach, and it's like, well, knowing that we don't know, how about we just break down this mash bill and do it all by individual grains. And so which is a little more akin to like how Canadian whiskey is made, in some aspects, in that we're going to mash, ferment, distill, and barrel age each grain individually. So corn, we're going to make corn whiskey, rye whiskey, wheat whiskey, malt
that
whiskey.
makes sense.
And the corn whiskey is considered bourbon because it's 51% corn. So that's why all of our spirits will say blended bourbon whiskey or blended rye, blended malted rye whiskey. It's because instead of having a mash bill, we're blending those barrels after they've aged for a certain amount of time already. Okay. And then it's just a subcategory then within bourbon or rye.
That's fascinating. So when you're thinking about grains, like I know, if you taste enough different beer, you kind of, I feel like I know what a beer tastes like if Maris Otter was used in it. Mm-hmm. I know if something has rye in it. I know if something has like chocolate malt in it. Mm-hmm. Is it similar for you when you taste different spirits where you're like, oh, yeah, they had to have used at least a ballpark percentage of this grain?
Yeah, so rye is one of those grains in particular. Yeah. Rye is very apparent. Like you can really pick it out. In bourbons, that would be considered as like a flavoring grain. So it's not the primary one, would be like your secondary grain that will shift the flavor profile one way or the other. And rye, especially raw rye, can have a very minty, spearmint, dill character that is very prevalent. And especially like in rye whiskeys themselves, where they're at least 51% rye, it's in your face, it's intense. So like rye, you can definitely pick out. Corn is it's a big, oily, it's sweet for sure. Wheat's going to have soft, creamy mouthfeel, just like in beer. And then malt is is it going to like lend in malt, typical malt characters?
Yeah.
But then from there you can add, different varieties, just like in brewing of, caramel malted, toasted malted, honey malt, all those kinds of things.
Okay.
And so you can shift the profile quite a bit. But most traditional bourbons, ryes are going to be made with raw grains.
Okay.
And then I think, again, just like in brewing, I think that character is very different than a malted grain.
I did a little sleuthing on your website because I really am fascinated with this. So your rye whiskey uses 80% rye, 18% corn, and 2% malted barley.
Yes.
Your wheated whiskey is 63% corn, 25% wheat malt, 7% barley malt, 5% rye malt. So those are two very different grain bills.
Yeah.
And I'm not very familiar with wheated whiskey, but I do know that, from the beer standpoint, wheat in a beer does several things. It'll kind of make it softer. Also, doesn't it increase head retention?
Yeah, not real important in whiskey.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you get a whiskey and it's got bubbles on it, it might also have chew spit in it. So you got to be very careful with that. How did you decide on kind of like the specific types of whiskey that you wanted to focus on?
Yeah, and this is where we did this single grain process because we didn't know.
Okay.
And we were just being honest with ourselves. There's no way you can know. And we were trying with intention to do a lot of things very differently than what is traditionally done. One, just out of necessity. I mean, if you were in Kentucky, I mean, the scale that those places are operating at, where they're laying down 1,500 barrels of whiskey a day.
So ridiculous. Just like,
we're 3 years in and we've just eclipsed that mark. So
yeah,
if you're going to try and replicate what they're doing, what's the point? So you have to look at it differently. You want to make something different that has a reason for being on the shelf.
Okay.
And this has been a big learning. And sorry, I'm going back.
No, that's fine.
Keep going back.
This is all fascinating.
Yeah,
by
big
the way.
learning curve.
This is so cool.
With craft spirits and craft beer having similarities, but also being very different in that craft beer was a response to domestic lagers being bland and boring and all tasting the same. So they made it these very flavorful, beers that even were different colors and very different than what was already out there. With spirits and like bourbon production, macro bourbon, if you want to use that same analogy, is pretty good. Like, and really good. And so like the need for craft to come, revolutionize that category, you got to do something different because they're making it at scale very cheaply,
right?
And it's good. So I mean, you have to have a reason to exist and be different to stand on the shelf. So bringing it all back to, we decided we're going to do all these grains individually where we can mash differently for the different grains, ferment differently, nutrient additions to control fermentations, how we distill them at different proofs, and to try and get the best flavor possible out of those grains. And we thought that we're going to lay down the best whiskey that we can of each individual grain component, let it age for a year, and then we'll start to see where we're at from a flavor standpoint.
Okay.
And then we blended all just based off of blind to create a flavor profile that we liked. And that's how we ended up with these kind of weird mash bills, is that we knew we wanted to make a wheated bourbon. We both liked, the softer sweetness that wheat can give and push in bourbon into that kind of flavor profile. But we would have never settled on that mash bill. It's kind of a weird mash bill. And with the rye, the reason that 2% barley addition, so we liked the 100% rye just as is, but we liked a little bit better when you added some of that, a corn barrel in there, which has some sweetness. You're going to get some body and some sweetness and kind of balances the spice that you get off a rye. Okay. And with our corn whiskey, it's made with 90% yellow corn, 10% malted barley, because corn doesn't have any enzymes to convert itself. To create alcohol. So we need that bit of barley to convert all the starch in the corn. So that's why we always end up with a little bit of barley malt, and that's why same with the wheated bourbon and why it's got that 7% barley malt addition. That's all coming from those corn barrels.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you're enjoying a One Pint Stand. My aim is to help spread the word about craft beverages. Enjoying craft beverages is a passion of mine, and I love chatting about them with other people. A One Pint Stand has a goal of helping breweries and distilleries tell their stories. I love to get out in and beyond Minnesota to visit breweries, distilleries, and meet other interesting craft beverage people. If you also are into those things, you probably want to keep tabs on the show. So go ahead and follow a One Pint Stand on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. I also started a TikTok account because I was tired of Charles calling me a boomer for not having one. I would also appreciate any and all positive reviews on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to help make it easier for other craft beverage listeners to find us. If you want to be a supporter of the podcast with some of the extra change you find in your couch cushions, I've got a Patreon. There are 3 different monthly levels of support, and they're priced at $1, $3, or $5 a month. If you pledge at the $3 or $5 monthly level, you get some pretty cool perks. So go to patreon.com and search a One Pint Stand to check it out. We're up to 28 supporters, and I'm really excited for what that means for the show. If you like reading about craft beer, check out my written work on a onepintstand.com. I love to write, and that's where you can find a lot of the written content covering both local beer happenings as well as my craft beer travels. I even slip in a few distillery visits from time to time. I truly appreciate you listening and taking time to enjoy our stories. Before we head back to the show, I want to talk about our sponsor, Heavy Rotation Brewing. Their head brewer Josh brews some incredibly tasty craft beers up at this gem of a brewery in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. His award-winning Farmer Frank's Cream Ale and English Dark Mild London Calling are frequently on tap. However, Heavy Rotation doesn't just do beer. Did you know that every Wednesday, starting at 6:30 p.m., they have a free meat raffle? I know, in this economy, it's crazy. And the prizes come from Osseo Meats, and they do several rounds. Now, if you're like me and you get the meat sweats just thinking about meat, what better way to counteract the drooling and sometimes frothing at the mouth that comes along with the meat sweats than by drinking a pint of refreshing Heavy Rotation beer in the tap room? I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to experience joy, but take it from someone who has been to their meat raffle. It always delivers on fun. So make sure you follow Heavy Rotation Brewing on social media to stay up to speed with all their fun taproom programming. Now, back to the show.
How about a beer?
Now, there's 2 glasses in front of me.
Yep.
I've been very...
Right is rye.
Okay, rye is this one,
Yep.
and this is the...
Bourbon.
Bourbon. Okay,
Yep.
I'm going to try the bourbon first.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I'll kind of talk about it.
Really good.
Yeah. So we, again, coming from a brewing background, only wanted to use malted grains instead of raw grains. So the 25% malted wheat of that, the wheat recipe that we're using a significant portion of Cara Crystal wheat. So
Okay.
Caramel wheat malt that we get from Breeze Malting. But all of our base grains are all malted here in Minnesota. We've worked with Rar Malting, Malt Europe, Vertical Malt, and Malt Works.
Wow. That's very smooth.
Thank you.
The aroma is so good. It's so... I'm working on my bourbon descriptors.
Mm-hmm.
It's different because it's so much... This is going to sound dumb, but you definitely get a lot of wood. But then there's like a kind of like a sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a... Almost like a... You know, if you're like in the kitchen and somebody's baking a cake.
Yeah.
Kind of a sweet baking aromas.
So we thought that using malted grains and caramel malted grains that you get a lot of those deeper caramel flavors,
Yeah.
perception of sweetness
Yep.
for sure is a big thing. And that, again, versus raw grains, we thought that you get a lot more out of the malt. Obviously, it costs a lot more, but you're getting so much more flavor that it
Yeah.
justified making that. another big thing talking about the sweetness is we only use Minnesota oak for our barrels.
Okay.
So 100% of our spirits are aged in Minnesota oak grown barrels. So we work Barrel Mill and Black Swan Cooperage, both out of Minnesota. We work with both of them. They're getting oak from kind of the northwest part of the state and the central part of the state. And then we've just started working with Kelvin Cooperage, which is a Louisville, Kentucky cooperage. But we spec staves coming from the Stagmeyer Stave Mill, which is just south of Rochester.
Okay.
So we're getting oak from the entire kind of that band of oak forest that cuts across Minnesota. So we're getting it from all 3 sections there, which is, in the grand scheme of things, minimal. But you have 3 different barrel cooperages now with 3 very different flavor profiles, and we use those to create consistency that way.
Is there such a thing as terroir for trees?
100%.
What do you notice is different from the oak grown in like the northwest part of the state versus like oak grown in like central Minnesota? Or do you have to go further?
Yeah, I think you gotta go a little further. For my palate,
Sure.
Maybe somebody can pick it out. But yeah, I mean, that exact question was our reason for being. We wanted to explore terroir,
and I think that's fascinating. Who else is doing that?
There are places.
Okay.
I'm not going to say we're the only ones doing it.
Yeah.
But what's unique about, I think, what we're trying to achieve is that everything you need to make whiskey grows in Minnesota, and it grows exceptionally well. So, let's box ourselves in, only use ingredients that we're either growing on co-founder's family farm or that we can get from, we say, the Northland, because we use a little bit of Breeze malt. But otherwise, everything is basically coming from Minnesota, and that's unique down to the barrel.
Yeah.
And so what we get from, and what I've been told from Minnesota grown oak or cold climate oak, Minnesota, even Wisconsin, is that you're going to get more vanillin than southern grown oak. Think of Missouri, Tennessee, kind of Kentucky, those areas where they have longer growing seasons. It's hotter, faster, larger growth rings in the tree. Ours is colder. They're a lot tighter grains. They're going to have more tannins, but also more vanillin in the colder climate.
Okay.
And if you compare that to a European oak, it's probably more similar to Hungary or Hungarian oak.
Okay.
Which is a step different from French oak, which is, again, we're in the same latitude, but very different climates based off of just the temperature.
Yeah.
And then southern oak, you're going to get more coconut, and it's, I think, a little more bolder, I think, in flavor.
Okay.
And again, I'm learning descriptors too, but
I'm going to start going around licking trees because you're hey, am I getting anything? Hey, maybe we should cut this one down. That's so crazy.
Yeah, but I think that you definitely get more vanillin. It's a softer, sweeter northern grown versus southern grown, which is I would say maybe a little more brash, a little more in the coconut realm. But again, there's so many things that factor into too of if it's air dried, how it's dried, the time it's dried, if they're spraying it or just letting nature run its course. They don't get this, if they're aging a stave 18 months in southern Missouri versus northwestern Minnesota, climates are going to be very different over those 18 months.
Yeah.
And so how the wood is broken down, the natural, the moss, the lignins, everything that soften those tannins when you're aging is really going to affect the flavor that you can get from there too. So there's a lot of, even beyond just where the tree is grown itself, that's going to factor into the final flavor of the wood. And then, from there, the 2 Minnesota cooperages, so everything we age is a number 3 char medium toast, but they'll say a number 3 char in Kentucky is a number 2 in Minnesota. They just they have a little heavier hand on their flamethrowers.
Sure.
And so even just because there's no official definition of what char is, it's all just based on the cooperages, what they say this is. Char, so.
I'm going to create. They say sometimes you need to create your dream job. Maybe when I retire from teaching, I'm going to go into char inspector. I'm just going to go to places. I'm all right, here's my little rubric for char, and just taste them. Nope, this is a 2 char. No, this is a 3. That would be really interesting.
Yeah. And then Black Swan, they water bend their staves, so they'll raise the barrel and then they'll soak it in a hot water bath. and then that's what they use to soften the wood to bend it into a barrel shape. The other two cooperages fire bend, so you build a fire over the raised barrel, let that toast and soften the wood, and you just cinch it.
Oh, interesting.
That way.
Okay.
So that all plays into the flavor of the wood. So it's, the functional terroir is also compounding the actual terroir of what you're growing it in.
That's also interesting because there are that has to be really difficult with. It almost seems like there are too many variables. Like how do you establish so you've come up with a really great blend here. Mm-hmm. But like, let's say you get, with climate change, whether you believe it or not, I think things are changing. I don't know that can you say, all right, for the next 5 years, we can pretty much guarantee that this wood is going to give off this kind of a flavor? So based on like how much precipitation, how warm it is.
Yeah. I mean, these are all big unknowns. I mean, just, I'm sure you're seeing it too, where you're at, the ash tree, it's just getting wiped out essentially overnight, out of nowhere. Like, what happens if that happens to the oak tree? I mean, that would be devastating to our industry.
I think that's a big thing with, bourbon especially is that, I'm like, okay, so it doesn't take very long to cut down a tree.
It takes a long time to grow a tree.
So it's like, how are we, I would hope that there are some really well-paid scientists coming up with a solution. But as I think about, something you said earlier, where where craft spirits are about 30 years behind craft beer.
Yeah.
If it's even like 75% of the growth that craft beer had, we're going to have a problem when it comes to sourcing wood, sourcing oak.
So this has been an ongoing problem intermittently. Yeah. Just there's a finite amount of forests, and like the trees, oak trees especially, grow slowly. I think southern grown, like the minimum age that they'll cut down a tree is 60 years old. North Minnesota, where it's again shorter seasons, you're looking at 80 to 100 years old.
Right.
So we're cutting down trees from the Great Depression right now.
That's mind blowing and scary as hell.
Yeah. So the climate change, these aren't something that we planted a couple years ago. Yeah. These are planted a century ago. So their resiliency, I think that's to be determined. But in the greater context of all oak that is harvested in the United States, 90% of that oak goes to construction, in like hardwood floors and cabinets.
Yeah.
That's what most oak is used for. Like 10% of all the oak harvested, from what I've heard, is used for barrel production. So it's a significant portion, but a small portion in the grand scheme of things. But it's also the highest grade of trees. You need a perfectly straight tree trunk to harvest without any knots or branches. So you're picking the best 10% out of there. So I know there was a barrel shortage because during COVID there was no loggers going out and harvesting trees. There was it's like other external factors that typically play into when barrels are a shortage. The bourbon has seen this huge boom, and with it having to be aged in new charred barrels, there's been a big crunch on harvesting trees and barrels, and there just wasn't enough barrels being made to keep up with demand. I know at one point when there was a housing boom, building all these new housing construction, that was putting a big strain on oak availability. So everything is interconnected. So it's, right now, coming off of like the big COVID bump of when everyone was at home drinking bourbon, things are kind of settling back down.
When I got real into it too. It's kind of funny.
So it seems like that conversation has quieted down a little bit as of now. But again, things change so rapidly, so it's hard to tell. Yeah.
I have to compliment you. This blended bourbon is really nice. It's very smooth. This for me and what kind of my palate likes, I like a little bit on the sweeter end. There's like a nice little bit of it's that Kentucky hug. You get that little warmth, but it's not
Minnesota goodbye.
Yeah, the Minnesota. This is really good. And some of those, now the wood is a lot more. Seems like the aroma of the wood is very prominent. But I like the kind of like the sweetness, the brown sugar little aspect in here. What other flavors should I be getting out of this?
So the way we do our fermentations is quite a bit different than I would say most places do it. And that, going back to the Star Killer and sour beers, is we have a very long, slow fermentation in the context of distilling, and that 7 days is a long time.
Okay.
Typically, you're going to see 48 to 72 hours just rip in and out as fast as you can go. So we're trying to slow things down quite a bit. We don't have any cooling, and we just have wooden open-top fermenters, which is very unsanitary if you think of brewing. But what we want to do is we underpitch our yeast to encourage more ester production, to try and get a more fruitier distillate, esters coming over in the distillate. And with that, we're also allowing the natural bacteria that's coming off the grain and just what's ambient in the air to really play a huge factor in the fermentation. So our ferments get ripping acidic, and that's all natural coming from the grain. And when you distill that, those acids combine with the alcohols to make esters. And we're trying to coax fruity characters out of it that gives you some of that palate textural, kind of a creamy character to it, but you can also get some fruitier notes, we get like some cherry cola notes sometimes. And like when we get to the rye too, especially, maybe that's a good transition.
Yes, perfect.
Rye.
You don't have to ask me twice.
Yeah. Rye in particular has a ton of floor on the grain coming off the field. And those ferments for us really are a struggle. And it's like a wine analogy, is like, the vines that struggle produce the best wines. Sure. And I think that's really apropos to what we're trying to do with the rye, and that our rye ferments, we're using an old heirloom variety of just very low protein rye that just struggles to ferment. And so like the bacteria takes over, it gets ripping a sour, but in time with barrel aging, those estrify and I get a lot of like citrusy, almost apricot character coming from the rye distillate. And that's primarily coming from the fermentation part of it. So yeah, now we got the
blended rye malt whiskey. Mm-hmm. Now this won an award at the San Francisco
World Spirits Competition.
Gold medal.
Yeah, we won a gold at San Francisco, a gold at the American Distilling Institute, and a gold at the Ascot Awards.
That's incredible.
Which was pretty cool.
That's very awesome.
For our, initial launch.
Yeah, that's really, so the aroma on this is so different. Mm-hmm. There's much more herbal.
Yeah.
Is that crazy?
Yeah, no. Rye.
I'm not having a stroke, am I? Okay, good.
No, but even if you think of like if you've had rye beers, Rogan beers, like rye is going to have a lot more of those herbal notes. So yeah, definitely that tracks with distilling. But again, some of those fruitier notes.
Spicy.
Yeah, definitely spicy, and that's a typical rye characteristic. Yeah. But a big difference here, and I don't know how much rye whiskey you've drank. Like raw rye tends to lend this very dill, herbal, spearmint, minty character.
Oh yeah.
Where malted rye.
You said spearmint.
Malted rye. You're going to get more of the caramels. It's kind of more tames the beast. Essentially, rye whiskeys can be known to be pretty fiery and assertive and spicy.
I like them. I've also a lot of old fashioned aficionados will tell you that rye whiskeys make the best old fashioned. Mm-hmm. Is that simply because they need a little bit of kind of on their own? They're a little bit wild.
Yeah, definitely that's part of it. And I mean, when you're creating a cocktail, you're trying to create balance in a way, right? So if you're adding sweetness and bitterness, you want that bitterness or the spiciness to counteract the sweetness. Yeah. So if you get spicy from the rye, you can add sweetener. And that's how you create a balanced cocktail. It's not that you can't make a great old fashioned with bourbon, but the oldest use was with rye.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this would be very good in an old fashioned, but drinking it neat is a real treat.
Thank you.
Now this has this has a little bit, it's not as sweet. There is a little bit of sweetness in there, but just like the bourbon, it's very smooth.
Thank you.
And I think that's I don't know, sometimes when there are some spirits out there that are very hot. And you take a little bit and it's kind of is very jarring. And I always think, you got to give it 2 sips. The first sip, your palate's getting acclimated to it.
For sure.
Sometimes it, especially, if you're trying a sour beer, I'm like, don't judge it on the first sip. It's just gonna, you got to get used to it. You gotta give it a chance. So you give this the Kentucky Chew. Kind of coat your mouth with it, your entire mouth, your tongue, and then go in for the second sip. And this is just, they're both very smooth.
Thank you.
And that is, to me, the difference between something that I'm buying at the liquor store that I'm going to just put into a cocktail, or something I want to enjoy as a special treat if I'm having a friend over, if we're sitting there, just conversing or watching a game, or I want to be able to really savor, enjoy, and try to pick out the different flavors and aromas. Because I think that's also something about beer and cocktails. These should be communal things. You should taste this with somebody else because no 2 palates are the same. And I think it's really fun to kind of dissect and really nerd out. Yeah, you can just sip on it and that's okay. But in the right company, trying to really kind of try to figure out the puzzle is a big positive.
Yeah. Just slow down and contemplate.
Yeah.
But yeah, we, again, trying to do a lot of little things differently in, that little things add up to be big differences.
Yeah.
Is kind of an approach we've taken with.
So when you decide to go down that road, what are some of the challenges of, okay, we're going to, I remember talking to somebody about 12 years ago. They wanted to open up a bar that only had local craft beers. And they figured out very soon that was impossible because of the 3-tier system and distributors and all that stuff.
Yeah. Now you can.
Now it's easy. When you set out to kind of okay, we want to showcase local ingredients. We want to really try to stick to our mission of not having to go beyond a certain radius. What were some of the challenges that went along with that?
Well, I mean, Minnesota's climate, when you box yourself in, is pretty variable. I mean, we're heading out, after this podcast, we're going to head out to our wheat and barley fields, and half of our barley is laid down flat. It got lodged during a storm. So we've had some pretty wild weather. We've missed 2 planting seasons of rye due to drought. Rye, you typically, you plant in the fall, late September.
Okay.
It'll grow for a little bit and then go dormant over winter and then start growing again.
Okay.
We've had 2 years when it was just, you would be sowing seeds into dust and there was no chance. I mean, no chance at growth. So yeah, we've missed two of the 5 seasons that we've been growing rye due to drought. So you adapt. Luckily, Minnesota's I believe the largest rye growing state in the country. So we've always been able to source rye from someone else here in Minnesota, but different varieties. So, and that's, embrace that variability and, you can blend for consistency or blend for uniqueness too. And that's kind of one of the fun things about spirits is you can adapt that way. Prices, I mean, we started up during COVID, so prices have been on a hockey stick and just keep going up and up and up. There's plenty of challenges from the raw material standpoint, just utilizing an agricultural product from a very specific area is going to have its challenges. But then in the greater context, and going back to your analogy about, all Minnesota beers, there is a perception that you can't make good spirits unless it's from Kentucky or Tennessee.
Yep.
And that's going back to that 1995 roughly time analogy is that there was a time in Minnesota where people thought Minnesota beer was crap. Had to come from Colorado, California.
Right. Yeah.
You can't make good beer here. And I think that's, we get that a lot. We'll go into a bar, sample it out. Oh, Minnesota spirits, they're just not good. We just don't sell. Meanwhile, he's got 30 Minnesota beers, on tap behind him. And it's overcoming that,
Sure.
That's been our experience so far. It's like, oh, yeah, no thanks. We'll just pass without even trying it. So
let's see. Okay, so that's just blatant ignorance. At least try it because these are very good. I wonder, and I'm sure there's no real logistical way to do this, but like if you were to have people do blind tastings, I think that's really the way to do it. Both of these two spirits, the blended bourbon whiskey and the blended rye malt whiskey, have a lot of complexity going on. I bet they'd stack up. Well, I mean, the award shows, especially with the rye, that it stacks up pretty well to other competitors. I feel like, growing up in Minnesota, we just it's not just spirits, it's not just beer, it's our sports teams.
Oh yeah,
it's just we're just not complex. Cool enough, and I'm kind of sick of it. Yeah. So when I go traveling for beer, or last summer when the focus was kind of doing a lot of bourbon, I'm like, come to Minnesota, try stuff. Like, we've got good things going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not as well versed in local spirits as I am the local beer scene, but I've had a couple pretty amazing things from Jay Carver.
Yeah.
Like what they're doing is really fantastic. My question for you is, as you were kind of getting off the ground with your partner, which other local distilleries did you kind of chat with, and who was helpful? I know, in craft beer, I'd say the high 90% of most breweries will be very helpful. Talking with when Steve Finney was opening up Little Thistle, like the folks at Dangerous Man and Fair State were like, you can look at our business plan. We'll help you every step of the way. That, to me, is fantastic. I don't know how many other industries that happens. Is it the same in the spirits world? I mean, your grain bill is on your website for everybody to see.
Like I said, we opened up during COVID, so we didn't really get a chance to go talk to anybody.
Crazy.
So it was a bit of just going out on our own and hoping for the best. Since then, we've joined the Distillers Guild and have gotten to know a lot of the distillers, but I didn't really know anyone going into it.
Yeah.
I knew everyone in beer, but the distilling world was a whole different thing for me. Yeah.
So if people are looking for, where can people find your products? Are you in the liquor stores?
Yeah, we're getting there. So we're with Dahlheimer Distributing in the central part of the state, and have really great coverage, ton of awesome local support. We're just rolling out into the Twin Cities now. That's been a little bit of a slower roll.
Okay.
I just did a tasting at South Lindale Liquor, so I know they have it. South Lindale,
oh, nice.
France 44 for sure. So we're getting there from a distribution standpoint, and then I think I know Grumpy's and Bulldog have it behind the bar.
Nice.
So yeah, just getting started on the whiskeys, but if you are not able to find it, please ask for us by name. That helps a lot. And if you're up for a road trip, like you coming down here, we have a cocktail room open Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
Minnesota laws, you have to make everything on site. So all of our modifiers, our mixers are all made in house. And
interesting.
And then we have a rotating seasonal cocktail menu. So we're always trying to make seasonally appropriate cocktails and keeping the menu fresh.
Okay. As somebody who is very much a novice when it comes to cocktails, if somebody's coming down here, is there a cocktail that they should really kind of have their eye out for? Especially, I know you said you mix up the menu seasonally, but are there cocktails that kind of stay year round?
We kind of have it broken down in we have classics, which are just world famous,
Yeah.
classical cocktails, old fashions, Manhattans,
Okay.
The standards. Then we have always we call it our tropical section. We do rums as well. I love rum. So we have 5 or 6 rum forward cocktails. Mike, our bar manager, loves tiki style, so always in that kind of tiki vein with a lot of tropical fruits. Nice and refreshing.
Okay.
Then we'll have some light and refreshing ones. That way, vodka gins, spritzes, sodas, soda waters, sours, lighter, easy drinking cocktails, and then like some seasonal ones that again vary with the season, depending if we're using our whiskeys or any other types of spirits, and kind of seasonally appropriate ingredients that we'll make in house to create cocktails that way. So and they're great at just working with you too. So even if it's not on the menu, they've had a ton of
That's
experience.
always really
now.
fun because it's like
hey.
okay, I'm in this kind of mood. Give me 1 second.
Yep.
Go back there.
Absolutely. They're great at that.
Start juggling things like Tom Cruise and cocktail. Next thing you know, you've got a thing in a coconut and it's flaming. And it's like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
That's fun. How many different spirits do you, I know we've been focusing on the whiskey and bourbon.
Whiskeys.
How many different ones have come out since you've been open?
Yeah, whiskey is our primary focus. I mean, that's like 90% of what we're doing. So we have the bourbon and the rye out. We're working on American single malt. We've been laying that down for the last couple of years. That's shooting for Black Friday of this year for our release. That'll be coming up here in a bit.
That'd be a good weekend to come down, right?
Yeah. We did a bourbon release
It was only an hour and a half from St. Paul.
Yeah.
So there's no excuses, people.
Yes. Come see us. So we got our whiskeys and then rum. We have, again, I loved rum. That was my COVID rabbit hole, was turn of the century rum literature.
Oh, interesting.
But so we got a white rum, an overproof rum, and we'll have our barrel aged rum, which is coming out here pretty soon. And then we make a gin in-house and a vodka. Those are kind of the basics. We have a brandy that we sourced from Copper and Kings in Louisville. I think you...
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, the place was cool.
I was there with Rick and Paige, and it was so funny because I didn't realize at the time when I booked my Airbnb in Butchertown why it was called Butchertown. But Copper and Kings is also in Butchertown, and Rick, Paige, and I were on a tour, and we were supposed to be with this other group. And they were walking from their cars into the place, like, we don't like how it smells here. We're not going to do the tour. So the guy was like, well, I'll just give you guys the industry tour since you seem like you know what you're talking about. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that we tried everything.
Yeah.
And when I say
they pour heavy.
I was like, oh God, this is more than I bargained for.
Yeah. We were not expecting that either. And there's like a taco place like a half a block away, and they must get more people from that tour than can only stumble that far. I'm like,
find it.
Give me all the tacos.
Yeah. It was so crazy because they were doing a pachuca. Yeah. So they had like some experimental stuff. We went down in the barrel room, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna pour you some stuff. Don't tell anybody." They're not looking to listen to this. It's fine. And then how they agitate their barrels is really interesting.
Wu-Tang.
the different playlists. So they're like, "Okay, put your hand on a barrel. I'm gonna play some music, and just physically feel how it moves." I was like, okay, is this gimmicky? Is this? I mean,
oh yeah,
the barrels were moving.
It was pounding when we went down there.
That was pretty interesting. But I was floored. That place was incredible. Also, they were like filming some like Food Network show, and they had made like some pastrami to go with it, and they brought some out for us, and like we were sitting there, and this was like well into the tour, and we're a little like tuned up, and I think the guy wanted us to wait because he wanted us to try the pastrami with a certain like thing. And then Rick was like, that lovable Canadian. You can't be mad at him. He's like a Canadian puppy dog with really stylish glasses. Copper and Kings was really interesting.
Yeah.
But we tried through their entire portfolio, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I need a nap and I need some food. And we went straight from there to La Bodeguita, the Cuban restaurant.
That might have been the
on
taco
the
place I
main
was referring
drag.
to,
Like,
showing
it
you
was like really
the condition
crazy.
we were in.
I've
But it
never
was-
been so happy to see food.
We were like, we stumbled out like, where's the nearest food? We need some now.
What were some of your other places? I mean, so when I was in Louisville, I just kind of stayed in the main downtown area. So I think I did Kentucky Peerless, Evan Williams, Old Forester, Copper and Kings, and there was one more, Angel's Envy.
Yeah.
How far along the trail?
We did it, and it was, this is almost 10 years ago now, so there was a lot less, fewer distilleries. Maker's Mark was awesome. I mean, the complex is amazing. Woodford, same thing, just absolutely gorgeous. Like you're in a holler, or the rolling bluegrass fields and horse farms, and
it's
like
also
come down into the
pastoral, just like
it's gorgeous, yeah,
just amazing.
Those were two of my standouts. You appreciated each one for different reasons.
Sure,
like we got to go into the Barton Distillery. We were just talking about this yesterday. They shut it down for tours like the year after we left. And it was very like industrial, just like no frills. Like here it is. Like there's the giant thing. And you walk over here, look out for that truck. Don't step in that.
That's my kind of tour.
There was like like an industrial charm about it. Wild Turkey was really cool. And, that kind of seeing that there was one, like I had always kind of dismissed Wild Turkey. And after that tour, I walked away with a completely different respect of Wild Turkey, like really a newfound appreciation for their spirits.
That's a good reason. You said earlier, talking about, when people think about macro beers, they kind of poo-poo it or they did at a certain time. I definitely think with some of those bigger brand bourbons, you can't discount them. And I think it's very much, it's very eye-opening to go to those larger places and kind of understand the process and the craft. And it's as crazy as like a Miller Lite that's so pedestrian. A Wild Turkey, once you realize what goes into it, it's a very good bourbon. Like, just because it's affordable doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
I think that's also maybe something, that prevents people from really finding stuff is, when I did the podcast with Shorewood Liquor, they were talking about, when you're trying to buy bourbon, sometimes you don't necessarily need to go up on the shelf. Sometimes you need to just go side to side because price is not necessarily an indicator of what is good and what is bad. Same thing for wine. And so I think it's good when you're thinking about spirits to keep an open mind because you might miss a very good product. 1792 is a good example. That's $25.
Yeah.
That's a good bourbon. You can sip it. You can put it into a cocktail. So I think there's like, with spirits, especially with bourbon and whiskey, there's a lot to explore. And I think you really do need to keep an open mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're going to be a little higher on the price point thing. And then like it's going back to justifying our existence. We're doing a lot of things to justify that, to create a product that is different than 1792 or one of the Kentuckys, like trying to create a spirit that has a story about a place,
right?
That going back to, being proud about being Minnesotans, wanting to have a spirit that is representative of of what we are. Well,
and I think after tasting these two, I can honestly say that Black Frost is kind of the antithesis of everything that you would assume is mediocre about Minnesota. The sports teams, the Twins, the Vikings, the Timberwolves, not the Lynx. They've won many championships, but this is high quality. I love that you're willing to sit down and tell me the story behind it because I think that is also very important.
Yeah.
If you happen upon at your local bar or your liquor store and you see Black Frost, I think you'll be very glad you pulled the trigger on it because these are just two of the things that you offer. Of these, the blended bourbon whiskey and the blended rye malt whiskey Both sensational. Jace, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Yeah,
this has been another on-location episode of A One Pint Stand. Cheers.
Cheers.
I hope you found that backstory of Black Frost informative and might consider traveling down to their cocktail room to try their incredible array of spirits. Jace is putting the same passion into distilling that he did with brewing when he was at Shell's. He just understands how to craft something unique and special. His insights about spirits, ingredients, and the terroir of it all are so fascinating. He's excited to talk about what he's learned, and I think he really gets a kick out of seeing other people geek out about spirits along with him. I cannot wait to pay another visit to the distillery and try more of his cocktails. I will also be putting out an article that covers the field day event that I went to after recording the podcast, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Now, I want to give a special thank you to Brad Ashton, Marcus Dodson, Chuck Dorsey, Vicky Epper, Daniel Fisher, Todd Fitzloff, Laura Fleischfresser, Matt Holton, Cable Lefto, Dave Long, Ben Michaels, Brent Newman, Bree Smith, Jesse Storms, Sarah Cry-Valento, Cal Vandehoof, and Brian Wu for being Kegstander level supporters of the A One Pint Stand Patreon. You've all shown incredible generosity, and I'm grateful for it. Cheers to you all. I want to give a huge shout out again to our amazing sponsor for this episode, Heavy Rotation Brewing. They have a fantastic beer lineup, great weekly events, and a welcoming and friendly staff. Check them out on their socials. Just search up Heavy Rotation so you can stay on top of their dynamic plethora of beer releases and fun. They are an absolute Minnesota craft beer gem. With that, this has been another episode of A One Pint Stand, a Minnesota craft beer podcast where the pants stay on, but the caps come off. Cheers. I'm going to start going around licking trees because they're like, hey, am I getting anything? Hey, maybe we should cut this one down. That's so crazy.